Hello, everyone. Today, Alexa and I consider the impact of RBG, the impact she had on the world,
her rulings and dissents,
her impact on women in tech and in society.
and what comes next.
I'm Stephen Rosenbaum. This is Future Forward, standing on the shoulders of giants.
I'm Alexa Scordato. Let's launch.
So we're going to do this show in three parts. We're going to look back at RBG, her work and her legacy, with a particular focus on technology and communications, because that's this podcast's focus. Then in part two, we're going to look broadly at women in technology, how things have changed, and really how we're, I don't want to say turning the corner, because that's maybe more optimistic than I want to be, but really some extraordinary women that have built their careers in part based on the work that Ruth Bader Ginsburg achieved. And then finally, part three, what comes next? Who will replace her? And really what this next chapter means. With that, we're always happy to have you join as a comment, ask questions, participate. We're on Facebook Live. We're also on YouTube Live. If you have any thoughts and want to just jump in, join the conversation. So let's start with the history, because among other things, it's just absolutely extraordinary. I rewatched. I don't want to say that I was a fanboy of hers, but I think I was.
Hard not to be.
And her story, I don't know. I just, if you watch either the documentary or the dramatic film about her life, and they're different, by the way. It's funny, if you watch them, they tell the story differently. They kind of get the facts a little differently. They're not. But the idea that she graduated the top of her class at Columbia Law School and couldn't get a job.
Right. And she was a member of the Harvard Law Review. Like she went to Harvard first before transferring.
Right. So it's worth, and Alexa, I just have to ask you, as a woman, when you watch this story, like how much of your career and your opportunity and the different battles you faced, but not, being like, oh, you're female, I'm sorry, you've been rejected, thank you very much. Like in one lifetime, that went from being, the standard behavior to completely unacceptable, or at least mostly unacceptable.
Right. So RBG went to Columbia Law School. And so I actually used to be a tour guide when I went to Barnard. And so she was always on this list of like noteworthy alum. And, I think that was probably like the first time that I sort of just had this mental note of like, wow, the world that I live in was not always this way. There were people who came before me who sort of shattered the glass ceiling or norms, and she certainly was one of them. I feel like the news is, it's in some ways it like, at first it made me fearful and it made my like insides churn a little bit. But when I think about honoring her and her memory, she was so courageous and brave and so effective. She was just really tactful the way she went about change. And so hopefully I can just keep that in my back pocket.
So the thing about her that I keep coming back to, and we'll talk about some of her decisions in particular. She was tactical and brilliant, but never high-handed or mean or egotistic or self-aggrandizing. And I find the fact that she fought some of the early battles by taking the side of men who, for example, wanted parental leave. I mean, as a legal tactic, it was so brilliant.
Well, her mom gave her two pieces of advice. So her mom passed away from cancer the day before her high school graduation, and she told RBG two things: one, be a lady, and two, be independent. Be a lady, meaning like just don't let your emotions, don't let your anger get the best of you. And so if you're going to lead and you're going to fight for something, do it in a way where others will join you. And I think the be independent part, I mean, it was a time when women were just resigned to just household work. And so I think she always had a sense of like, I could meet Prince Charming, I could be married to my husband Marty of 50 plus years, but I should always be able to fend for myself.
But it was never out of anger or fear or defensiveness. Like, it just makes you wonder, like, I mean, her setbacks and her losses and her, her medical history, and her how many bouts with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, she never seemed ever beaten. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, the only time I think she publicly really showed any type of like unprofessional emotion was actually with Trump, and she had to issue a statement. Remember that?
I do.
It was so out of character for her.
Yeah, no, that's right. I had forgotten about that. So let's just talk about decisions for a minute, or dissent, because I mean, so here's a quote. This is from the history.com website that we have pulled up. This is in quotes, equal protection for women and men means males cannot be preferred to females.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, going back to a case, Reed versus Reed in 1971. And this is the case in which Ginsburg wrote the plaintiff's brief that relied on the 14th Amendment. This is a strange question. I mean, I was about to say she was a towering intellectual, but I'm not sure that that's exactly right. I mean, brilliant, certainly, without a doubt, and we'll go down in the history of the Supreme Court as that. But in some ways, much more tactical, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of like, there are all these memes like with her name, but my favorite one is you can't spell truth without Ruth. Like, I don't actually think you need to be intellectually smart or book smart to understand the concept that all people should be treated equally. But maybe that's just that might just be a symptom of the world that I grew up in that she helped create.
So, I sent out the Media Lab newsletter yesterday morning, and in it, after her passing on Friday night, we tore up the newsletter. We rewrote a good chunk of it, and we ended up posting the documentary about her. And I said in the newsletter, I went looking. I figured somewhere had posted the doc on YouTube, and I would just find a free. And then I was like, no, it's $3.99. If anybody in the tech world that we communicate with can't afford to throw $4 down to a documentary filmmaker, and by the way, there wasn't, even if I'd found a ripped off copy, I obviously wouldn't have published it. But I was glad to say you support her and you support the story of her by participating. And so the fact that newsletter came to your inbox and then you watched the film again made me really happy. It's like, yay.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many people, that newsletter goes to 12,000 readers every week. I wonder how many people watch the film. I mean,
if people don't like documentaries because they think they're dry, it's actually very romantic. There is this beautiful love story that is part of her life. She was not, this sort of angry, raging, protesting feminist in the 70s. She was quite the opposite. She never protested. She just did her job.
Yeah. And talk about her granddaughter, because that's also a fascinating piece of the film.
So her granddaughter, Clara, she was a member of the Harvard Law graduating class of 2017. And she was telling her grandmother, Bubby, that she was a part of the first class where it was a 50-50 gender split, men and women. And it was such a stark contrast to when RBG was there before transferring to Columbia, because she was one of 9 women in a class of like 500 men. And she actually was in the Harvard Law Review, which meant that she was in the top 25 students, the top of her class. And not only did she do that, she had to actually support her husband, Marty, who was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and she had a daughter. So not only would she go to class until 4, then take care of her kid, then she would nurse her husband, who was going through radiation treatment. But after all was said and done, he recovered, got a job in New York, and then she had to leave Harvard and then go to Columbia. So, I mean, if you just look at the early part of her life, from her mother's death, going to college, which was rare, getting married, having a baby, like she still sort of did what she was supposed to do, and then just pushed enough to sort of make her own way. And I think that was also a theme of her life, which is that change comes incrementally. It's step by step.
So let's look at the 10. We pulled this link for 10 essential Supreme Court cases of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because I think, yeah. And by the way, important among other things to remember that she was the second woman on the court and the first Jewish woman on the court. And, the fact that we won't get into, we'll stick with the cases because the cases are,
Three things going against her. She was a woman, she was Jewish, and she was a mother.
Yeah.
Those 3 things. Yeah.
So of these 10 cases, is there one worth, they're all interesting. And we don't have to read through them all because we have a bunch of things we want to talk about. But and I'm just kind of scrolling through them to see if there's.
So the three noteworthy ones, just after reading all the news coverage over the last few days, U.S. versus Virginia was noteworthy, basically saying that this military institute in Virginia wasn't co-ed. And so, she also was so witty, right? She said the argument was that women couldn't handle the training program, and that this institute was so rigorous and difficult that how could women possibly take that on? And she very masterfully said, well, like most men couldn't either, right? Most men are sort of not up to the standard. Why discriminate against women? The other 2 cases that really stick out for me are the Social Security benefits. She actually defended a widower. So at the time, women, like getting Social Security benefits if your spouse died, was actually a mother benefit. And so she actually found a man who had written an op-ed in the newspaper whose wife had passed away 4 hours after delivering their child. And when he went to go receive his benefits, he found out that he wasn't eligible. And so it's a good example, Steve, of how she actually sort of argued the man's side in order to make the point that gender discrimination is actually hurtful.
And and again, I have this sense that it wasn't that she sat in a conference room and went, "No, we really want to fight for women, but let's find some pitiful male character we can put up there to kind of jujitsu our case." It was like, no, equality is equality. Like like she understood kind of not in a mean-spirited way, but just in a thoughtful way, that equality goes both ways, and that she was more likely to have a successful outcome using that particular wedge. Like it was that was the, I mean, judges, lawyers do that all the time. They're looking for the right defendant to battle a complicated case. And so,
right.
I guess the word I keep coming back to, and some of the people who know her career better than I do may disagree with me, but I think that there were things about her work and about the way she approached things that were extraordinarily practical.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know where I want to, I know that this is wrong. I know that if I'm this good a student, I shouldn't have this much trouble getting a job. Like, I need to find a practical way to like not theoretical, not like some big, the world should be a better place. But the idea of her as practical, I find really appealing.
It was practical, but it was also radical at the time. The first time she made an appearance in front of the Supreme Court, she's looking at 9 justices, and she was there to argue on behalf of her client, who was serving in the Air Force and wasn't getting a housing stipend in the way that her men colleagues were. And so I think they expected to hear something about just, clerical paperwork, and she was able to really deliver this grounded case that really talked about discrimination on the basis of gender, and the 14th Amendment really being the anchor for that. If the 14th Amendment says that all people are granted equal protection under law, are women considered people?
So my wife's birthday was in August, and I went looking for a couple of presents for her, and ended up at this gift shop in the Upper West Side. And there was this wonderful kind of rough-hewn pencil holder with a picture of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's caricature on it. And it just, it literally jumped off the shelf at me. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about it, obviously, over the weekend, and thinking about, what message did buying that for my wife say to her? I mean, and the answer is, all kinds of messages, all kinds of things I believe in, all kinds of things that I wanted to say to her that face transmitted without any words. And so when we pulled up, there's lots of lists of powerful women in tech, and we pulled up one. I don't know if it's the best list or the worst list, but it's a list. And I thought it would be good just to talk about, particularly, for a generation of young women. I think this is a moment to understand that, this is the thing that Ruth Bader Ginsburg said often, which is, all of us, in the career she was in, are standing on the shoulders of giants. And, some of these women I know, some of them I don't, some of them I'd never heard of before. Did I know that there was a woman who's the CEO of IBM? I have to confess, I did not know that. But let's just, of these women, which are the ones that jumped off to you?
So it's funny. I actually also had not realized that some of these women existed. And I think it just also goes to show sometimes you're not always the loudest voice. You don't get the media coverage. There's so much about Sheryl Sandberg that's out there, but you look at all of the coverage around, say, TikTok, right? And it's Oracle that's actually involved in the deal now. And who's the CEO of Oracle? It's Safra Catz. So, I mean, it's just, it's a really great example of, a world where, yes, it's not necessarily 50-50 split. We are so far from that in tech, but there really are women who have risen the ranks and who make really big decisions. And that actually wouldn't be possible without the legislative efforts of RBG in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond.
So is it that women are, I mean, when I look at this list, some of these names I know and some of them I don't. And some of them I'm puzzled by why they're on here. But is it that the media doesn't give them equal footing, or is it that they're more modest? Isn't the word I mean to use. More work oriented and less self-aggrandized. Why did we not know this list going into this show? And then secondly, for young women, does RBG further remind them as they wake up this morning that the work's not done?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, maybe this list is very RBG-esque in the sense that, if you look at when you think feminist, right, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like I grew up, if someone said, you're on Family Feud, name the number one answer for who's a noteworthy feminist, I'd say like Gloria Steinem.
Yep.
Right. And that's because like Gloria Steinem was a mouthpiece. She was an activist and she was vocal. Like she drove a conversation forward very publicly, but it doesn't mean that what RBG was doing in her professional arena wasn't just as important, right? If anything, you would say it was even more effective because it changed the law of the land. I would imagine that these women are probably in a similar situation where it's like being good at your job, excelling in your career, and sort of influencing your sphere of influence is probably their way of affecting change, not necessarily taking like an interview with TechCrunch.
Yeah.
I don't think you could do both. Like I even find that difficult as an operator. Like if you want to be on the speaking circuit and sort of out there building a personal brand, it's actually hard to do the back office work.
It's interesting. Yeah, no, it's an extraordinary list, and we'll share it in the show notes. And part of what I realized as I was looking at this list is I want to know more about all of these women. I want to, and this is the other thing too, and this is maybe a different show for some point down the road, but like, I don't think that women should have to, I don't think there's anything particularly admirable about men who claim credit, shove people out of the way, don't credit their coworkers, don't see the work, don't understand that they are standing on the shoulders of giants as well. And so, I wouldn't want to believe that the way that women become more successful in technology is by impersonating their male counterparts. I would say the opposite, which is, and this is maybe gets back to RBG again, like she didn't say, I'm not going to be in a loving relationship, I'm not going to be a mother. This is the unspoken complexity of the moment in time that we're living in for women, which is this, can you have it all question? And the answer is not if your male counterpart or your counterpart of whatever sexuality he or she is, doesn't do their half. Mm-hmm. Not if you have to do all of the family raising and all the cooking and cleaning and the job, right. Which is why RBG's approach to equality was so brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. So
there are two sisters on this list.
I'm sorry, who?
There are two sisters on this list.
Yeah.
Susan and Anne.
Yep.
Ojicki.
Yep. All right. So let's get to the elephant in the room and talk about what comes next. My reading over the last 48 hours has changed. It started out with, oh my God, her seat's going to be filled by some horrible human being. That person's going to be in the seat tomorrow. They're going to affect the election. Like that was the knee jerk, and I think the first response was, and lots of super smart people who I know and respect essentially posted that, you know, on Twitter in the hours after her passing. But a more reasoned review of it has risen up from the, and I don't, I mean, I don't know if I know what the next chapter is. I mean, have you processed it and come up with what you think it is?
I mean, the optimistic side of me would say, you know, the work has to continue.
Yeah, I'm being a little bit more granular than that. Like, we've got this election coming up. You may have heard of it. It's like, it's going to be a big thing. And theoretically, I think we imagine it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. Trump, you know, whatever the outcome, someone's going to cry foul. You know, Trump's already teed up that he thinks there's going to be fraud. So that's going to end up at the Supreme Court. So the question is it this Supreme Court as it now currently sits, or is it this Supreme Court with another, you know, hard right Trumpian, female, Latino, Black, of color, Floridian? Is that all the check boxes, right? Now and I don't have any inside information here. Well, I have a little, but you know, there is now fairly reasonable understanding that the process of seating a Supreme Court justice has a whole series of steps, and that even if they move with lightning speed, which it appears that McConnell plans, that they might not, that they probably can't get that to a vote between now and November 3rd.
Yeah. Honestly, what I'm banking on is that RBG was such a force within her colleagues that they will actually honor her legacy and respect her last wishes. She said she hopes that her replacement will get selected by the next president.
Well, no, that's not what she said. She's specific, because I read it 3 times. She said by the new president.
By the new president, yeah. Yeah, so there's a distinction. Like, she wants Biden to win, and she wants Biden to find her replacement. Because
I mean, if Trump were reelected and
he's not new,
he wouldn't, right? So, like, you know, presumably she uses every character that she writes down. I mean, I'd love to see how many drafts of that thought she had before she came up with the word new.
Right.
All right. So the only thing I guess I'm not sure about is, even if her colleagues respect her wishes, her colleagues aren't McConnell, you know, or Lindsey Graham.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So here's my fervent hope. My fervent hope is that every young woman who has been saying, "Oh, I'm really busy and I'm going to try and vote, but I think that, you know, it's going the way," like, will think about Roe versus Wade, because I mean, what is on the table is a woman's right to decide how she determines her health care. Mm-hmm. All kinds of other things on the table, but certainly there is no doubt,
right,
that the court was already leaning right, and that she was the strong, passionate voice that kept some amount of, you know, balance. And you know, it's worth understanding, and I think based on my email traffic over the weekend and the Zoom calls I've been on, and and everything I've read, that her passing is waking up. I don't mean that exactly, but is changing the tenor of the political environment.
Well, I hope so. I mean, with Black Lives Matter, with the passing of RBG, I mean, there's a lot on the line. But I don't know. I guess this is where I will be the skeptic. I thought women would turn out in 2016, and they didn't, or they did for the other side.
Well, we don't have to relitigate 2016, except to say, in the days after the election, I had many friends who knew nothing about what Donald Trump actually stood for, and thought maybe he was a closet Democrat. I mean, after all, he was in New York. Like literally, people voted for him because he was able to be kind of translucent, and they thought, well, maybe he'll be a breath of fresh air. Maybe he'll be different. Maybe he'll, get the, I mean, no one will make that mistake in this election.
Yeah.
No one will go to the polls not knowing who Donald Trump is.
Right.
I mean, whatever of the long list of terrible things we could go through, among them, the fact that he knew that, COVID was deadly and then lied to the American people for months and months and months and said, and still does, no, go out, live your life. Don't wear a mask. I mean, I think anyway, so I think I don't mean to be flip, but I'm going to say this. I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing couldn't have happened at a better time. I think that her last act of leaving this earth was to say to everyone, and it will go on today and all weekend and all of next week and on every news show and on every magazine cover, wake the fuck up. And to me, I don't expect to change anyone who's decided who they're going to vote for. I don't think any of those people are changing their mind. I think they've been set for months and months and months. To me, this election will be won or lost based on non-voters from 2016. People who said, you know what, both sides, I'm tired of politics, I'm worn out, I'm just going to stay home. Fuck it. And so if this reminds young women, and I'm saying young on purpose, this is not an election you get to sit out.
Yeah.
This is not an election you get, if you're carrying a Ruth Bader Ginsburg pencil case or T-shirt or, or bag or button, or if you've, watched the movie or whatever, if she has touched your life in any way and you think that you don't have to vote this year, then she is from the grave saying to you, you know what? Go to school, then go home and care for your ailing husband, and then care for your child, and then wake the fuck up and vote. She's like, look what I did. It's, yeah, I know you're busy and you got things to do and maybe you won't get, so.
Yep.
That's my analysis.
I hope so. We can only hope.
All righty. Well, we are out of time for this fine show. Nice to see you again. See you next week.
Yes. See you next week.